Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. This is the opportunity we get, thanks to Kojiko TV and your TV, to talk about the things that are animating discussion in our town. And with me today to talk about the animated discussion that's going on right now about the Greenbelt is Anastasia Lintner, who is a very distinguished person with more credentials than I will ever be able to say go to my name, and Franz Hartmann, who leads the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, and Oakville Green's very own leader, Karen Brock, who for the last 10 years has led Oakville Green. Anastasia, help the audience out with a little bit about your qualifications. They dwarf the rest of us.
Thank you. My name is Anastasia. I currently live in Kingston, Ontario. Before that, I lived in Guelph for quite a long time. And I work with the Canadian Environmental Law Association, a specialty clinic within Ontario's system of legal aid clinics. And we're funded almost exclusively by Legal Aid Ontario. But I lead up the Healthy Great Lakes program. And that program is about our waters and wetlands throughout the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence River and Ottawa River basins. And I'm a lawyer, but I also did a PhD in natural resource and environmental economics back at the University of Guelph. And I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I was with you in a meeting the other day, and I was so blown away by all that you could say, and so cogently, that that's how the idea for this show was born. And Franz, you've been leading the Greenbelt Alliance longer than I can remember, possibly longer than I've been around, because I've only been mayor for 15 years. And have you been leading the Greenbelt Alliance for 100, or is it 200?
Well, no, actually, I
Does
haven't been
feel like
leading. I've been involved with the OGA, Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, for well over 10 years. I was on the steering committee for about 8 of those. In the last couple of years, I've been the coordinator. I was on the steering committee while I was the executive director of the Toronto Environmental Alliance. So I've had a long association with the Greenbelt and the Greenbelt Alliance. And the alliance is made up of over 100 plus groups across the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And we're all brought together because we care passionately about the Greenbelt, and we care passionately about protecting natural spaces and agricultural spaces that are in and around the Greenbelt that we know are absolutely key to our future.
And do you include as your member, as among your many members, uh, this little group called the Municipal Leaders for the Greenbelt, which I currently lead?
Well, yes, we have worked with the municipal leaders for the Greenbelt many, many times over the years. We're essentially a network. There's no formal membership process. As I said before, what brings us together is our passion for the Greenbelt. And the Alliance has thrived because we're providing tools for our members to help them go into their communities, to talk to their local constituents, to their supporters about the Greenbelt. And most importantly, we're there saying, here's how you can talk to them about it. Here are the benefits, and get them engaged. As more people learn about the Greenbelt, they also realize what an incredible resource it is, and that leads them to helping us put more to tell more people about the Greenbelt.
Well, and Karen, I have to say, to introduce you, Karen, I have to say, you live, it appears to me, by the motto that was attributed to Teddy Roosevelt, who said, do what you can, where you are with what you have. Don't wait for perfect. And Karen puts the root in grassroots. So Karen, talk about how, I mean, people need to know, if they don't already, how Oakville Green has focused for 10 years or more on the actual day-to-day living that makes for a greener world.
Well, thank you for that. That's a pretty strong comparison, but I think we do value what we do in terms of local work. And I think, there's a lot of talk about climate reality and climate change, and it's pretty overwhelming. And I think where we gain the greatest support is by people saying, I can join Oakville Green, I can put a shovel in the ground, I can plant a tree, or I can, write a letter. So we really value that that local action. But it doesn't mean that we don't join up with other groups. And certainly the Ontario Green Belt Alliance, we've been members for many, many years. And as Franz said, they give us the tools. Can't go without talking about environmental defense. They have wonderful information and a very strong group throughout the whole GTA, and I probably even say Southern Ontario. So we really rely on those relationships because we're all going through the same thing, the stressors with urban development and the stressors on forest, wetlands, rivers, and some of the green fields that we have. So it's good to feel that we're making a difference. But we are a small but mighty group, but we have a lot of colleagues working for the same purpose.
Yeah. And you've had a great influence on our other community groups. Like we have many residents associations in Oakville. I've frankly never seen the like of it in other cities. And because you participate in their monthly meetings, I think you've converted all of them. So
Yeah.
way to go on that front.
Well,
Anastasia, what's bringing us together today is the opportunity to grow the Greenbelt. And there is cynicism and suspicion that has attended the announcement by the Ford government that they're sincerely interested in growing the Greenbelt. But they have focused on certain clearly identifiable areas of the province. They've done a pretty good job of making me believe that they really will grow the Greenbelt. But when we met last week, you laid it out so clearly. Can you just lay out what's in front of us? What is the opportunity that we've got here?
So the consultation is flowing out of a commitment to grow the Greenbelt made in the 2020 budget, that there will be an opportunity to grow the Greenbelt. And there is a notice under Ontario's Environmental Registry, which is part of Ontario's Environmental Bill of Rights. And that gives us an opportunity to be involved in environmental decision-making of the provincial government. And if you make a submission, make a comment, those submissions need to be considered by the protections in our Environmental Bill of Rights. So it's an opportunity to have a say about the specific priority areas. But also in this proposal, what I really appreciate is that there's sort of a suggestion of 2 priority areas under consideration, but a further set of questions around the importance of where could we be growing the Greenbelt? How do we balance it with the priorities of the province? And we are all trying to figure those things out. And so throughout the areas that are currently from the Oak Ridges Remain over to the Niagara Escarpment, where are there areas, like you mentioned, the farmlands that we need to be protecting for future growth in our communities? Is there places? Can you be telling the government about them now so that when they consider the specifics of the proposed boundary, which will come out in a second consultation, they have all of that information at their fingertips?
Yeah. Well, here in Halton, 3 years ago, the regional council, it was a split vote. It was like 12-9, but they voted to ask the province then to expand the Greenbelt into the so-called white space in Halton, which is mostly prime A agricultural land. And a majority of us here, and I think it might be a bigger majority now, because there's been a municipal election since then. We've been talking about how we need a food belt, and we've been willing to create a Halton food belt if the province won't create a food belt. Is sort of the concept.
That would be great. Yeah.
So so I know councils this month in Halton are considering making suggestions. I mean, we have staff reports at our council meetings this week to submit nominations for comments in answer to these questions. What else can the public do? Can the public tell how the public can participate?
So anybody in Ontario can make a comment on the Environmental Registry. to voice what you're considering about growing the Greenbelt. So it's an opportunity to voice your thoughts around how important it is, because I think it is important to make sure that we have protected agricultural lands, water, and nature for people to come here in the future. And you can sort of put in your own submission, of course. You can also talk to your neighbors. You can talk to your elected officials at council level, your member of provincial parliament. It's an opportunity to make, a formal letter into the government, but also to speak to everybody about how you're feeling about this and how important it is to you in your community, because it really is not just about kind of an overarching abstract provincial policy. It's about how it's going to be important to curbing sprawl in individual communities.
So Franz, your network of groups, you must have hundreds of submissions ready to go in. Is it April 19th, the deadline or something like that?
It is on April 19th, and for any of your listeners who are interested, just go online, type into your search engine Environmental Registry of Ontario, and you'll come to the homepage for what's called ERO, Environmental Registry of Ontario. There's a search function there. You just put in Greenbelt, hit return, and up will come consulting on growing the size of the Greenbelt. And that page has a summary, it has supporting materials, and it then has a bunch of questions that people can answer. So all that information is there, and if you want to do it alone, you can just read and submit stuff. Alternatively, the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance, we're going to be helping all of our 100+ groups prepare submissions. We're going to be providing some background material for them, some suggested answers, etc., based largely on work that we have been doing over the last decade. Back in 2018, a bunch of Ontario Greenbelt Alliance members actually put together a proposal. We called it the Blue Belt Map, which outlined the areas that we thought should be included in the Greenbelt. So bottom line is there's going to be a lot of activity, but there's no such thing as too much public input. So I urge all of your listeners to go to the website, go to the ERO website if they want to learn more, or just go to probably Oakville Greens will have something. I know CELA, Canadian Environmental Law Association, will have something, and of course the Ontario Greenbelt Alliance. So there'll be lots of places for the public to go to learn more about who's saying what and what they may want to say.
So when will your material be ready? I ask because at the end of every month, Oakville has this community leaders roundtable that meets, and Karen is a regular there. And I imagine, Karen, you'll be, I hope that Franz's stuff will be available. You can circulate it at the meeting, and we can generate some more entries.
I can't give you a specific date at this point, Rob, because it's still a kind of a work in progress. That being said, I'm very confident that Karen will be able to come up with really, really good ideas and potential answers for people in Oakville and more generally in Halton, because the thing to remember is that we've been thinking about this for a long time. This consultation is just the next step in an ongoing process of figuring out how do we expand the Greenbelt to cover more areas that need protection from urban sprawl. So there's a lot of information out there right now. To be blunt, it's more a question of cutting and pasting and doing a bit of editing than creating stuff from scratch.
Well, Karen, I'm pretty sure that everybody's going to be eager to hear from you on growing the Greenbelt. We have two perennial ideas in Halton, the food belt and more urban river valleys. Can you think of anything else we might want to do?
I think it's important to speak to expanding the Greenbelt, absolutely, and certainly our supporters and I'm sure many of the people in Oakville who live here because they are close to the Greenbelt and all that it has to offer, economic farmland, recreation, and so on. But I think it's important for us to be honest and speak to some of the threats to the Greenbelt. I think one of the principles that we are operating on is we want to add to the Greenbelt. We don't want to take away from the Greenbelt. And I think there's a real threat there in that you make Swiss cheese out of it if you're sort of removing it as fast as you're adding it. So I think our principle is that we really have to hold on to what we have. And we know that there are many, many requests, and from the document I looked at this morning, at least, at least 100 requests to remove land from the Greenbelt. I didn't see any in particular from Oakville, but I know there are some in Burlington, Milton, Halton Hills, Hamilton. So I think there's a constant, and I think people are saying, hey, what the heck, let's ask. So I think it's important to protect what's already there. And we don't want to ruin the integrity of what's there. And we want to add and add buffers and add to make it a wider, permanently protected band.
Do the three of you feel the government has been genuine in its very strong statement that they will not consider reducing the policies or removing any land from the Greenbelt?
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll take a jab at that. I'm heartened that whenever the minister has been asked the question about removing land from the existing Greenbelt, he has responded, said no. And at this point, every request that I'm aware of that's come from a municipality inside the Greenbelt saying, we'd like to remove land that's covered by the Greenbelt, they've said no. So that's a positive sign. That being said, we also have to keep in mind that the government is thinking about building the so-called Highway 413 and the Bradford bypass, also known as the Holland Marsh Highway, and that's going to be smack dab in the middle of the Greenbelt. And that's really unfortunate because study after study has shown these highways actually aren't necessary. That if the goal was to try to relieve the congestion that was on the 400 or 401, it would be much better just to get more cars and trucks on the 407. In fact, one study said that if they built these new highway, it would reduce the commuting time for people on average by 30 seconds. Not really worth destroying huge amount of agricultural land and natural spaces. So to bottom line, we're heartened that the minister said, no, we're not going to let land that's in the Greenbelt be developed, but we're saddened by the fact that they're still thinking of proceeding with building these highways, even though an increasing number of municipalities, and including Halton, have said, we don't want this highway. It's not going to help us.
Yeah, in fact, our show is appearing after the Halton Regional Council meeting, and we're taping it before the council meeting. So I can't say for sure that it will have passed, but I believe that yet another resolution against that highway will have been passed earlier before this taping. So it is, there's another feature I found curious, and it was kind of an exciting feature of this announcement. They talked about being open to at least discussing increasing the distance from the water's edge that could be designated as Greenbelt. And I would have, and they don't call it a buffer, but I think of it as a
It's called
buffer.
The setback, I think. The setback.
Yeah. And Anastasia, do you think there's a chance of that? What's behind that?
Well, all I can speak to is what I've seen in the legislation, which to Franz's point, you can't, by the current Greenbelt legislation, reduce the size of the protected countryside. And their principles in their notice very clearly state that they do not intend to swap land, remove land, change the policies. So that is certainly promising. And then to the extent that there are discussions about how to meet the goals of the Greenbelt, having a prosperous rural economy, having the water and the connected natural systems to ensure we can reverse biodiversity decline. I think these things are all clearly important, and an opportunity for anybody who wishes to speak up and say they agree to do so.
Yeah, and you know, there aren't many silver linings to the pandemic, but certainly the increased appreciation of the value of not being dependent on other countries for basics like food, that sure has grown in my community.
Mhm.
So now I'm an optimist by nature, so I of course go, oh, well, maybe we'll finally get a food belt, but you got to keep asking
Yeah.
if you want stuff.
I do want to address your question though about, increasing the size of the buffers in the urban river valleys. I think that's a great idea. Making sure that more of that land is under the permanent protection of the greenbelt. There's no downside there. My only concern is that the government just doesn't get too focused on urban river valleys at the expense of a whole bunch of other areas that are being threatened by sprawl development right now. Those need to be protected as well. Those need to be considered as being added to the greenbelt. So as long as the urban river valley expansion doesn't become the prime focus, then, yeah, increase the buffer size, but make sure you're getting those other lands as well.
So the Paris Galt Moraine would be, I hope, a no-brainer that's easy to support. Where you alarmed me there with the mention that there might be areas subject to sprawl. Where do you have any in mind that we could add to our list?
Oh, I don't want to kind of start talking about particular parcels, but there are pieces of land in York region, in Durham region, the headwaters of
Hamilton.
Crothers Creek in Hamilton. Pretty well everywhere across the Greater Golden Horseshoe, there are lands that are unfortunately being, that developers want to put sprawl development on. And these are lands that often, are not often, they're natural spaces. There are places that we rely on for, our local produce and what farmers rely on to make a living. So, these are lands that we don't want to see threatened, and they're all over the place.
The thing that
Yeah.
disturbs me is that we hear often that, oh, well, the GTA is going to grow. We have to have highways. We have to have, more housing. But I think there's a smart way to grow. And I think we cannot build in green fields. We have to, it's way too expensive for the taxpayer, first of all. And as you said, Mayor Burton, this past year showed us that we have to protect. We need food close to where we live. We need recreation close to where we live. For our own mental and physical well-being. So I think we have to really change the narrative. And yes, we're going to grow, and we accept that, but we have to grow very smartly. And why not do infill? And I'm not talking about 30-story apartment towers. Do gentle infill so that you can have complete communities, walkable communities where everybody can have everything. I think the 15-minute model, you can have everything within 15 minutes. We're not going to totally kick the car habit, but I think we do have to sort of get away from car-centric communities and think of, what our lives are going to look like 30 years from now, and plan accordingly.
Well, there's one critique of the use of the unnecessary highways that France mentioned is we're way behind on building transit,
Right.
especially out here in our part of the GTA, where all of the bold promises of Metrolinx's big move back in 15 years ago, that were aimed at Halton, they've disappeared. They're not in the plan anymore.
Really? Wow.
Oh yeah, they had bus rapid transit schemes up and down Trafalgar to the Oakville GO station, up to the 407, and across from Hamilton to the other side of Durham, like Clarington, and bus rapid transit across Dundas to connect Square One with the other side of Burlington. Gone.
Really?
And
Wow.
meanwhile, we're still supposed to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm I'm the boy in the parade who's saying, "Hey, they took away the transit clothes from the emperor." I'm mangling the metaphor. I'm making sure, but
But I think you
And
raised a really, really interesting and important point, and that is, all of these things fit together. We can grow the green belt. We can accommodate a large number of new people in the Greater Golden Horseshoe in existing areas that have already been set aside for growth. Right? We don't need to go into the green belt to find new places to buy, to build new homes and housing. And the other good news is that there are an increasing number of developers who understand the importance of building complete communities and are beginning to offer those products in the market. The key thing right now is that the public just needs to make it clear to their elected officials, to the municipal leaders and to their provincial leaders, this is what we want, right? And this Grow the Green Belt is one opportunity for the public to say, hey, here's the vision that we see, and communicating with their elected officials. And the more of us that do that, the more likely it is that the elected officials listen to us. And the less likely is that they'll listen to be blunt, greedy developers who are really only interested in making money through sprawl development. We have to drown out their voices, and this is one opportunity to do that.
well, let's also try to engage and expand with them and reorient their idea of what good business is.
Exactly. Yeah,
Because after all, they need customers, and if the customer doesn't want what they're building, that could be an opportunity. We
indeed.
only have a few seconds left. Anastasia, do you want to have the last word? You're our honored guest here.
I would just encourage people to get involved. This is your opportunity to have your say, exercise your environmental bill of rights to participate. And
That's
if you need
perfect.
help, reach out.
That is just the perfect way to end this. I want to thank each of you for the time you gave us and that our community will benefit from. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And I hope you'll let me know, mayor@oakville.ca, what you'd like to see covered on Oakville Matters.